Welcome into Purple Daily. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, Declan Goff. You can find this show in one of two main ways. Podcast, Purple Daily Podcast, Apple, Spotify, and ScoreNorth.com. And the Purple Daily YouTube channel, which is part of the Score North umbrella, youtube.com/ScoreNorth. We would appreciate any love you could give us, either in the form of a subscription on YouTube or a 5-star rating and positive review. It helps spread the word about this show. And now the Vikings have the full team minus the COVID list guys, and they are going through various workouts in preparation for the season. There's still a lot of uncertainties in terms of whether or not logistically this thing can be played, but we're going to go forward as if the season is full go, and there are camp battles to be figured out without preseason games. And Judd, the first one off the bat here, offensive line, we have our first major piece of information about offensive line position battles.
The Nuggets are just starting to roll in.
This is interesting. This is from the Star Tribune here, Mark Craig, and I'm just going to read here and then we can dissect. An NFL season muddied by the world of COVID-19 has forced some pragmatic clarity along the Vikings offensive line. That's what jumped out Wednesday afternoon as offensive coordinator Gary Kubiak served up this tray of newsy nuggets during a Zoom video call with reporters. Here are the nuggets.
Yes.
Riley Reiff will stay put at left tackle. No experimentation at guard.
Okay.
We've kind of been saying that, right? Let's go, Reiff and Ezra Cleveland. You want to make Cleveland comfortable at tackle, but he's a rookie starting in the NFL for the first time, and then Reiff would move to guard.
But in fairness to Reiff, if you're going to move him to guard, you probably needed OTAs and
correct
the camps and training camp, and you're not really going to have that. So in fairness to Reiff, allowing him to play a position that he's not bad at is probably most fair.
And so, just in general, you haven't been able to do practices and OTAs and mini camps, and you're not going to have preseason games. So what are the two most important positions on your offensive line? Left tackle, right tackle. Let's just leave those guys. Mm-hmm. Let's just start there, leave those guys. The Vikings have said that's what's happening. Reiff's heir apparent rookie second-round draft pick, Ezra Cleveland, is competing for the starting right guard position vacated by the release of Josh Klein. Ezra Cleveland is behind Dakota Dozier and Aviante Collins for now in that battle. The line's three other incumbents, right tackle Brian O'Neill, center Garrett Bradbury, and even embattled left guard Pat Elflein will all start.
Okay. Let's play a game called Are You Smelling a Fib? Okay? Because this is all Zoom stuff, right? Like, we are literally being told, instead of going out and watching practices, it's welcome to Are You Smelling a Fib with Mackey and Judd. So we are relying on Coobs on a Zoom call without watching practices or walkthroughs to be telling us the truth. So I'm going to ask you, Phil, to start off with what you just read me, are you smelling any fibs?
I actually am not, okay? I actually am not. Now, I understand what you're saying, and you covered the NFL for a long time as a beat writer.
Are you really naive? That's the next game show we're going to play after this one. Welcome to Mackey Judd. Are you really naive? I'm going to tell you something that's complete BS, and you're going to buy it.
But here's why I don't necessarily think it's BS, okay. All right? So let's start with the tackles. You're going into the season and you don't have a chance to evaluate players in practice the way that you would or in games. And so, like I said off the top of the show, your left tackle and your right tackle and your center. So let's put Garrett Bradbury in there too. Not that his job was ever in question here going into his second year.
Yep.
Those are your three most important glue positions along the offensive line. If you feel good enough at those, like Reiff has been a veteran, O'Neill was their best offensive lineman, you could argue, last year. And Bradbury was kind of a train wreck at times, but highly touted, rookie, first round, etc. Don't mess with those. Mm-hmm. Go into the season with those, all right? Mm-hmm. So that leaves left guard, right guard, very much two areas of need for the Vikings. I don't actually hate the decision to give Pat Elflein one last shot. There really wouldn't be, what would the competition be? You don't get to, put Pat Elflein in for the first quarter of a preseason game and then put Drew Samia in, there's no way to compete.
Right.
So what they're saying is Pat Elflein's just going to be the starting left guard because we don't really have any other, there's no place to do a competition. So he's going to be the left guard until he train wrecks in the first 2 weeks, and then they can just replace him with somebody else if they need to.
Okay.
So I don't think they're lying. I think they're going in saying, all right, what can we just be comfortable going into the season with? And how can we? Because where are you going to compete? How are you going to have a competition, even at right guard?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no games, so you're going to compete in 11-on-11 next week for 5 minutes. I don't know. Are you going to compete in the film room, in the meeting room?
I know, yeah.
It's hard to have a competition.
It's the virtual meetings and who wants it most. I mean, it's very clear. The competition is virtually.
Maybe they're going to play Madden. All right, who can block the best on Madden?
Yeah.
Let's just go that route.
So I'm not smelling a fib at the tackles. O'Neal is definitely entrenched at the right tackle. Reef, I think that if you were going to make a move, you would have had to have an offseason program, which you did not. And so he's going to be the left tackle. And you know what? That's fine. And Koob said, I can even do more to help Reef out. Don't know exactly what that's going to be. But Koob's putting it on his shoulders that he is going to help Reef become a better left tackle in 2020 than he was in 2019. So I'm buying the tackles completely. Center, yes, you're not going to make a change there. Mm-hmm. Bradbury's a first-round pick. He actually, I think, did improve. So that's fine.
He was not a good pass blocker.
He was not, but
really
I believe he did improve a little bit from the guy who was picked up in Green Bay and launched into the third row and accidentally did a Lambeau leap, despite the fact he had no intention of doing said leap.
Set the bar low early in the season to keep your job.
Okay, so I think those three positions are set, and I think that's absolutely fine. The guards, I'm a little bit more suspect of what Kubiak is telling us. One is I think that they are going in with what you said, which is at left guard, we can't really stage a competition. So we're going to say it's Pat for now, and it is going to be Pat for now, but that does not assure Elflein of starting for a good portion of this coming season. But if this is true, I have a major bone to pick with the coaching staff. Okay, so this isn't just smelling a fib. This is more, are you serious? The game show called Are You Serious? So
should we fire up some more?
Do it.
Are you serious?
Judd's all gad.
Are you serious? Koobs and Zim and Dennison? That is the Ezra Cleveland end of this component, and hear me out. It sounds like from what Kubiak said and what Mark Craig wrote and interpreted as in today's Star Tribune, that they said that Ezra Cleveland is being coached up at right guard, okay?
Yeah. In fact, just for the purposes of having the full quote here, asked if he has already tabbed 4 of the 5 starters up front, Kubiak said, we got 4 of those guys back, so we go right back with them. And right now, Dakota, AC, Aviante Collins, and Ezra are kind of working at the other spot. What do we got? About 6 weeks to play a game, so we got a lot done. And he did not mention Drew Samia at all in this entire conversation.
Yeah, which is very weird.
So is actually, if you break down that quote, he says we got 4 of those guys back, so we go right back with them. Are we just left to assume that Elflein is going back to the left guard spot?
Right, that's what we're left to assume.
Or have they moved Elflein to the right guard without telling us?
Okay.
And now, because Ezra Cleveland has played on the left side of the line for his entire career,
and
right?
And this is my problem. If the quote is open for interpretation, if they are saying that they're working with, it's open for interpretation with Mackey and Judd. Hey, we'll be back after this. If they are working Elflein, if they have moved him to right guard and they're working Ezra Cleveland, who is a left tackle at left guard, I sign off on that and say, for now, that's absolutely fine. If the interpretation of the quote is that Ezra Cleveland is working at right guard, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't
because
love
here's
that
why.
either. Yeah.
Here's why. Okay. You're a left tackle. You're a second-round pick. You have no off-season program to speak of. You're going to be moved potentially to guard. I get that. I accept that. But I've always gone back to a conversation that I had with a guy that the Vikings acquired from the Eagles years ago, Artis Hicks, in training camp. And I did a story on him because he was being moved guard to guard. He was being flipped from left to right guard by the Vikings. And I said to him, and I went into my conversation with Hicks, assuming that, okay, it's guard, right? You play guard, you play guard. And he told me, spend the rest of your day today writing with your left hand and get back to me about switching positions.
Yeah.
Because your brain functions and all of the things you do have to be reversed if you go from the left side of the line to the right or vice versa, all right? So if you're asking, and we don't know for sure, but if you are asking Ezra Cleveland, hey, can we, without any real on-the-field instruction yet, can we just move you to right guard and you played the left side the majority, if not your entire football life, that to me is a weird ask. It's a bad ask. And look, if you don't want to play Cleveland flat out and you just say, if we put him in day one, it's going to hurt him. It's not going to help. He didn't have OTAs. He didn't have really training camp. He certainly didn't have exhibition games, right? So you just say, we are going to earmark possibly playing him at some point in 2020, or hell, Reif's going to be gone after 2020, Phil, so he's going to step in at left tackle in 21. I say it's not ideal, but do that. But if you're having him flip sides of the line, that to me is a weird ask, and I'm very curious to see when practices do open up. If we see Cleveland at that right guard spot, I'll flat out say right now, I think that's a mistake.
Unless it's a mistake unless they've decided long-term they think he can be a right guard. If they have long-term plans for him to be on the left side of the line, particularly at left tackle at some point, I wouldn't mess with this. I would just have him be the backup. All right, your left side of your line is Reif, and it's Pat Elflein.
Yep.
And Ezra Cleveland is the main backup on the left side of the offensive line. I wouldn't mess with the right side. I'm with you on this. I wouldn't mess with the right side for Cleveland in a rookie season with no chance to work out really against, preseason competition or anything.
Right.
Unless you had made the decision to move him to the right side long term.
But you don't draft a left tackle who you like in the second round to move him to right guard long term.
Unless I agree.
Like that would be very surprising
unless,
to me.
And I'm just throwing this out.
Yeah, I get it.
Unless they identified him as something other than a left tackle when they drafted him and just didn't say anything publicly, because why would they?
Yeah.
If they said, actually, you know what? We like you as an offensive lineman, and we think you can make the transition, and we actually need you over here. But long term, they need a left tackle because Riley Reif's not going to be on the team next year unless he takes a massive restructure and pay cut.
My question, I guess, off the Zoom call done by Kubiak is, did Kubiak not volunteer up the potential information that Elflein actually has been switched to right guard to compete there? And that by the way, would make the most sense. And I don't think that Elflein has a long-term future on this line. I really don't. And so if you were to tell him, okay, it's going to be tough, but you weren't that good of left guard, right? So we'll try you at right guard. It's not perfect, but I get that. So I think the most sense would be if we find out when practices do open up that the depth chart is more like Reif, Cleveland at left guard, Bradbury, Elflein / Samia, Aviante Collins, all of those guys at the right guard, and then O'Neal at right tackle.
Yeah, it's kind of a rough list of options here. They just don't have anyone. Brian O'Neal's about the only one on that line that you would say has a chance to be considered like above average consistently going forward. Because Riley Reif is kind of coming down the mountain age-wise, and he's had some injury issues. So that offensive line, I get that they're putting stock into Garrett Bradbury as a high draft pick, and they're hoping that he turns the corner.
He better turn the corner. He's a first-round pick.
If he doesn't turn the corner, there even just going into the season as is right now, you're really hoping that 4 guys figure it out, because Brian O'Neal has already figured it out, and I include Riley Reif in this conversation just because his play has eroded a little bit the last couple of years.
Riley Reif is not going to figure it out, to use your term. I think what Kubiak is hoping is that he can put Reif in advantageous situations enough to make him successful. And I think the key with the Reif conversation is he's certainly not a train wreck. So it's not TJ Clemmings like, which was just unplayable. But I also think that what you hope is that Reif can continue to play well enough until he gets the baton to Cleveland.
Yeah. Also, too, in this whole discussion about making guys comfortable in a tough offseason where you don't get to work out, and there's been some discussion, if Ezra Cleveland is a left tackle, then would you move Brian O'Neal to left guard? And it is worth noting that Riley Reif has played 8 or 9 years in the NFL. 8 years, I believe it is, 2012. Mm-hmm. And he's never played a snap at left guard. So that's also a stretch to just assume that he can jump in.
Because Detroit took him from left to right tackle, correct?
Detroit had him playing right. So he played left tackle for as a starter for 3 years. And then his last year in Detroit, he was the starting right tackle.
Yep.
The Vikings took him, moved him back to left tackle. Yes. He's never played a snap at left guard in the regular season NFL career.
And this goes across the league, of course, But how do you stage competitions?
You don't.
You just, it's damn near impossible.
You can't. I mean, how much value do you? They're going to do 11-on-11 practices in the Twin Cities Orthopedic Performance
Until
Center.
COVID starts to spread, yes.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
good luck with
discussion.
those.
But they have to go through some of those workouts, and so this is why to go back to the beginning of the discussion. Are they telling the truth about this? I think they're telling the truth about O'Neal at right tackle, Bradbury at center, and Reef at left tackle. And I think they're telling the truth about Pat Elflein just being a starter. I think the question is Elflein the right guard or the left guard? And then where do these other guys
What if
factor
they
in?
came out and said, did you see Elflein last year yourself? Do you really think we're going to start him again? What, are you crazy? Did you see him play?
Is he beyond? All right, let me ask you this. Like to me, Bradbury is still in the zone of he was highly touted. People thought he was NFL ready coming right out of college.
Yep.
He's your starting center, and he for sure gets the runway of at least 2020, maybe even 2021. Elflein's been in the mix now for 3 years, 2 as a center, 1 as a guard.
Mm-hmm.
Is he just sort of beyond the point where, you just got to be patient with a young player? Like, has he gone beyond that point?
At center,
for
he
you?
was pretty good his first year, but he hurt his shoulder, and I think he severely cracked his ankle in the conference title game. He came back and tried to play guard. I think the issue with him, and it's just the unfortunate reality of football, is the injuries might have cooked him. I just don't know. He has never been close to the same guy. And I think he's a tough guy, and I think he plays, I think he wants to be successful. So this is not, what's going on with Elflein? But I think he suffered 2 very substantial injuries in his first year, and I think what we're finding is there is a chance he's just done. It's not his fault. It's not the Vikings' fault. Stuff just happens.
Yeah, that is definitely a thing when you're talking about
Bradbury, though, better
human beings.
Bradbury, though, better improve. I mean, This is not, it's too bad that guy didn't work out.
Yeah.
This is a first-round center.
So that's what we know about the Vikings offensive line battle, in air quotes, to this point, is that they've got 4 of the 5 spots solidified, again, in air quotes.
Or do you smell a fib?
Coming up next on Do You Smell a Fib?
On the hot, Rocco Baldelli says Josh Donaldson's going to be absolutely fine. Do you smell a fib?
That's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time.